Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, buckle up.
Have we talked about a Charlie Kaufman movie before?
I don't think so, no.
I didn't think so, because he hasn't really made a movie since like Synecdoche. Well, he made Anomalisa, but I think that was like him working with somebody else, but he hasn't made like his own movie since Synecdoche, New York. So yeah, we're gonna do this. This is such a discombobulating thing, because not only are we going to be talking about the movie, we're going to be talking about the book. This is another edition of our page to screen segment. So I think that this is an interesting one to do, because I did not know this was based on I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Charlie Kaufman's newest film, was based on a book, but turns out it was based on, I guess, like a best-selling book. So we thought that this would be a good version of page to screen. And also it was requested by one of our listeners that we at least talk about the movie. So we kind of folded in the book part. I'd kind of like to start the discussion talking about Charlie Kaufman. Then we can kind of go back to the book, and then I think get into the movie and the book together. But how do you you just watched Being John Malkovich recently again, right?
Mm-hmm. I love Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah. Do you get drawn to his films every once in a while, or what's your relationship with him movie wise?
Well, I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He won the Oscar for that. It is conceptually one of the movies that I continuously think about to this day. The fact that I would love to be able to do that, just rip somebody right out of my brain. The idea of it is transfixing to me, and it doesn't really matter who it might be. It just matters the concept behind it. So, and Jim Carrey in a Oscar nominatable part, he was not nominated. Kate Winslet was. I think if her, why not him? When it came to performances, I think it should be the movie Jim Carrey should have been nominated for. That said, I love everything about that movie. I love the way it's structured. I love the idea of dissecting a relationship by basically disavowing a relationship and taking it and erasing it. So that's fascinating to me. Anomalisa, I just kind of stumbled on one day, and I was like, what is this? Puppets with penises. What is this? What is this?
I haven't even seen that movie.
Well, let's put it this way. The puppets are anatomically correct.
Huh. Okay.
For real.
And everybody looks like David Thewlis. I heard that. That's one of the things I heard.
Well, I'm hoping that that's all not 100% true, because I'm not exactly sure I feel comfortable with knowing what David Thewlis might look like as a naked puppet, but I do now, because that's exactly what it is. I joke about that because it made me feel uneasy, but at the same time, it made sense, because the puppets were supposed to, of course, represent real people in a real situation, and they have relations, and they stray away from full frontal nudity for men, and which is changing. And it's all, we've talked about this. It always bothers me, because then they do these weird angles where people's knees are in the wrong place, or somebody's arms are inappropriately over their shoulders, so you can't see certain things, and that always drives me crazy. So if you're going to do a puppet movie about a relationship that has these intimate moments, why not do a puppet penis? I just want to say puppet penis one more time. So I love Charlie Kaufman. Being John Malkovich, I rewatched. I was blown away by that movie again. I was blown away by the ending, the concept, the thoughts, the themes, the ideas. They're engrossing to me. And adaptation,
yeah.
I love adaptation. And he was nominated for the Oscar with his fictitious brother,
yes,
Donald Kaufman, or I think it's Donald Kaufman, which I think is brilliant that nobody picked up on that, because the movie's about two twins who are screenwriters.
Yep.
And I think it's Nicolas Cage's tour de force. And if it wasn't for Adrian Brody, anybody else could have won that Oscar that year. But Nicolas Cage is brilliant. Chris Cooper won the Oscar that year for Best Supporting Actor in a phenomenal performance that you don't really understand where that guy's coming from until you get where he's coming from. Meryl Streep is perfect when she's talking about those ants. They're so shiny. I love everything about adaptation. A lot of people thought it was a bit hokey how it twisted into this movie blockbuster ending, but that, I think, is the point.
Yeah.
I thought that was the point. And if anybody has seen it, they'll know what I'm talking about. And it frustrated a lot of people, but I thought that was, how could it have not ended any other way? just in the nick of time moments happen at the end of that movie. Illogical things that only in a movie would happen. Certain people have destinies that other people survive but should not have survived in the situation they're in at the end of that movie. I thought it was brilliant. I was dumbfounded by that movie. I was completely numb in the best kind of way. I was lit up. So I love Charlie Kaufman. I love him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my relationship with his movies kind of started with adaptation, then I kind of went back to being John Malkovich, and then when Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind came out, that was I really do enjoy that film also. But I do think that that his subject matter, the subject matter that he likes to dig into, whether it's very internal and conflicting internal struggles for main characters. I think that it's neat to see it through different lenses by different directors, because he's worked with Spike Jonze twice, and then with Michel Gondry and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But then after that, that's when he kind of went into Synecdoche, New York, and now this film, and Anomalisa, and now this film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And it seems like, at least from Synecdoche, New York, and then also this film, to me, it seems like he doesn't have any kind of like reins, like a horse would have reins. He's unbridled, I guess I should say. So he can kind of do whatever he wants. And I think that in some ways it allows him to make bolder choices, but it may not ground the films as much as adaptation, being John Malkovich, and Eternal Sunshine were grounded, even though those were they were definitely out there movies. I'm talking about a movie about somebody who goes into John Malkovich's mind and lives inside of his body as being grounded. So you gotta you gotta frame that properly. But yeah, I think that Synecdoche, New York, to me was somewhat impenetrable. Like, I could not. I mean, and I have not gone back to it. That would be a homework. That would be a homework assignment for me to rewatch that movie. And I think that I've gotten better at watching movies, especially after doing the podcast with you for the last 6 years. And so I could probably get dig more out of it with a second watch, but it's not really calling to me, especially not the same way that Eternal Sunshine or adaptation call to me. And I definitely revisit those somewhat frequently. I actually saw Eternal Sunshine in the theater a few years ago, so that was awesome. It was one of those like Alamo reissue type things, so it was great, and it was even better, and because I didn't see it in the theater the first time. So, but yeah, so that I think maybe people have a good idea of where we're coming from as far as Charlie Kaufman, and that's the thing that kind of drew both of us to this film. Another thing that drew me to this movie was the fact that we get to see. I mean, it's like a murderer's row of amazing actors, and you get Jesse Plemons, Toni Collette, David Thewlis, and then Jessie Buckley, who we've talked about before a little bit. And I think that maybe now you'll want to see Wild Rose a little bit more, because I haven't watched that yet, but I think that it's going to be pretty good. And so she is the main character in Wild Rose also, and she's also in the new season of Fargo, which I have not started yet, but looks really, really good. Yeah, I mean, just amazing actors all the way down the line. So I was really excited to see the film. So how did you watch the movie first and then read the book, or vice versa?
Yes, I watched the movie first and then I read the book based on us talking about it. And our friend, my friend in particular, who is a listener of our show, Nancy Frowert, she tweeted us after she watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and she basically was like, actor and engineer, what? Like, what is this? And I had seen trailers for this movie and realized, Jesse Plemons and everybody you just listed, and Jessie Buckley, who I'm interested in. She had a small part in Judy. So there's something about her. She pops for me. Toni Collette, David Thewlis, Harry Potter fans know who he is. So I'm all in when it comes to this movie. And then my friend Nancy, who has been listening to us quite a bit, she has a nice take on movies. She has a really interesting take on movies, and some more avant-garde / surreal stuff I know that we've talked about in the past, myself and her. And some things I will get, and some things she's like, that's stupid. Like, I don't get that. What is that? So I know her opinion on stuff, And so I was intrigued. What is perplexing about this movie? And these are all my words. I've not spoken directly to Nancy about this film, but I'm assuming that's what she meant by her tweets. So I was intrigued and I was all about watching the movie. Then I watched the movie, and then you and I briefly talked about it when we talked about what we were watching, that I had seen it. And you were like, well, what'd you think? And I was like, let's talk about it on the podcast after we watch it. And then I don't know, I think it was your idea where you said, well, let's read it first and then do a page to screen, because by that point you had already seen it,
Yeah.
I believe. And so I want to talk about this movie, but I'm glad that we're talking about it from page to screen and not just the movie, because I have better things to say about it now that I've read the book. I am thoroughly in love with the book. It's the first book in a long time that if I had the space and time in my schedule, not that I'm all that busy, but if I had enough time, I probably would have read it all in one sitting, which is very unusual for me. But I was really intrigued about finishing it. One, because I don't understand how the movie ends and why the movie ends the way that it does. And I'm always intrigued by somebody's interpretation of a novel. And we've talked about this before with No Country for Old Men. The Coen brothers left out one significant scene in that book that would have made the movie much more grounded, which is a great word, by the way, and less surreal, and would have made more sense if that's what you were looking for. And I had this sixth sense that there was a scene missing from No Country for Old Men. And I've read a couple Cormac McCarthy. I read The Road, and I've read something else, and I can't remember what it was. I was trying to think of that the other day.
Blood Meridian?
No, I can't remember what. I thought it was All the Pretty Horses, but I started that but never finished it. I can't remember what the other book was, but I know I've read more than No Country and The Road, which I thought was great. The Road was spectacular. So I understand that the Coen brothers have their tone in Thumbprint, but I knew something was missing from that screenplay, and I knew they took something out, and they did. So I was intrigued to read the book. Other than that one scene, though, the Coen brothers did a great adaptation of that book. So I'm always intrigued about what somebody's interpretation of a novel is. That said, I still don't know what he wants from us with this movie. What does he want from us? And I don't want to say all my things at one time, because I have a tendency to do that, and then I repeat myself for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But I will say this. The movie is so bogged down with themes and thoughts and ideas and captivating analytical studies of movies and what movies are to people. And I will say this, the second time I watched the movie, and I'm 20 minutes out from finishing it, so I didn't get the whole dance sequence at the end and stuff like that. Again, I didn't watch that again. Not yet. I have this sense that the first time I saw it, it's too much. There's too much in this movie to focus on. The ideas are so profound, but by time she does her monologue about, or actually she's repeating a reviewer of
Pauline Kael.
Yes, A Woman Under the Influence. After she starts talking about it, it's so in depth about what Jenna Rollins does in that movie that by time she gets the end of that speech, I don't remember why they're even talking about that to begin with. So I can't follow the themes and the ideas of this movie because there's too many of them. And then when I read the book, I went, that's why the movie doesn't completely work for me, because the book condenses it. Okay. And usually it's the opposite. Usually a book is much more fleshed out and has thousands of different ideas that they cut down to one or two themes for a movie. This book is opposite of that. There's one or two themes that run through this book that if Charlie Kaufman had focused on that, in my opinion, for me as a viewer, I would have been much more intrigued with the movie. For example, You Can't Fake a Thought. That's in the book. It's also in the movie, but it's swept under the rug in the movie because there's so many other things that they're talking about at the same time. When that line goes in there, it goes in. And if it wasn't for the book, I would not have remembered it. And when I read it in the book and that became a theme of that particular scene in the book, I went, when he cuts away all the stuff that he does and focuses on just that idea, I'm intrigued by it. I need to know, wow, I've never thought about that before. You can fake an opinion, you can fake a critique, you can fake a relationship, you can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake a thought. Why would you need to? They're your thoughts. Intriguing, profound.
Yeah, I think that there's there's things that you can say about that. I mean, there's your thought and then there's your thought about your thought. So that gets a little bit more complex because there's a thing called the imp of the perverse, and people talk about it in situations where like you're standing at the Grand Canyon and you think like, man, what would it be like if I just jumped off? You know, and it's like you're not necessarily like contemplating suicide, but you are thinking about jumping off, but you're not thinking about jumping off. You're thinking about jumping off. It's not real. You're not actually contemplating it, but you're contemplating it. So there's different levels, I guess.
Yeah, but that's contemplation. That's not faking it. Hey, do I look fat in this dress? Oh, no, honey, you look great. You can fake that opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You can lie to your wife and say, not your wife, anybody's significant other. Do I look fat in this sweater? No, you look great. How do you feel? I feel great. Then you look great. You could totally fake that. But in your mind, you're going, are they really trying to pull a sweater off? Haven't we talked about this sweater before? They've asked me about this sweater before. Why are they asking me about it again? Oh, be sweet. The person likes a sweater. Just leave it alone. It's just a sweater. You can't fake that.
I see what you're saying.
The point is that I'm not defending whether or not that thought is real or not, or that idea is real or not. I'm trying to explain that when I heard that in the book, when I read that in the book, for the next 10 or 15 minutes, it's not convoluted with a bunch of other things that are just as intriguing as an idea. And I can't think about that one thing because I'm worried about some pig and some maggots and some mother who's 3 generations in front of us. What is going on? It's too much. And I realized the second time I watched it, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying for me personally, this movie is too much to take in at one time. And I think the book smoothed it out for me.
Mm-hmm.
The book made it make sense to me because I saw what the themes of the book were, so I could understand what Charlie Kaufman was going for in the movie, at least what I could take from it.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to take things away the first time I watched it because I didn't know what to take. I was like, there's a difference between surreal and avant-garde for me. Okay, obviously for everybody else too, but for me, there's a difference. When something's avant-garde, I think that is left up to the interpretation of the person looking at it or reading it or listening to it or whatever it may be, or seeing it in a painting, that kind of stuff. And we've talked about this a million times. Art is in the eye of the beholder. Surreal has an interpretation behind it that I think a writer or director or poet or artist wants you to extract from it. Okay, you can still have your own interpretation of something surreal. Something avant-garde seems to be only interpreted by who's watching it. Does that make sense?
So
for me,
so is 2001 surreal or avant-garde? The last sequence.
Surreal.
Okay.
Because I completely understand how I feel. This is how I'm basing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm the audience member and I'm the one watching it. So for me, that all speaks to me. That whole last sequence when he's in the green room as the old guy and then the baby, it all speaks to me that he's seeing life without time. He's seeing the universe without time. So the beginning is the end is the beginning. It's a theme that we've seen in other movies and they've talked about in other things. Avant-garde is something like Suspiria, either version. And I've only seen clips of the original one. There are things that are in the...
Luca Guadagnino?
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of his first name, Luca. I was going to say Duca, but I knew that was wrong. Luca Guadagnino's film of a couple of years ago. There are a few things in that film that are just avant-garde that is left up to the audience interpretation. The movie of, I have to keep looking at the title, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, is surreal and avant-garde all at the same time. How a person is seeing it and what we're supposed to be getting out of it, I'm not sure what that is.
I'm going to use one of Charlie Kaufman's lines in the film to kind of frame the discussion, because I think I hear what you're saying, but I think that this is very similar to the discussion that the woman, the girl, has with, because she doesn't really have a name in this movie or in the book, that she has, well, I mean, you could say there's like 3 different names, like Lucy, Lucia, I mean, there's multiple names, but she's describing her paintings to Jake's dad, and there's nobody in her paintings. It's landscape paintings, and it's interpretations of a landscape. And he says, how can a picture of a field be sad without a sad person looking sad in the field? And so that, I think, is Charlie Kaufman kind of pushing back, saying, I'm painting a picture of a sad field. You know it's sad because of what you bring to the picture of the field. And I'm trying to make something that is collectively sad to all of us, or is collectively confusing, or collectively whatever to all of us. And I'm not going to do the extra work of painting a sad person in the picture for you. You're going to have to bring yourself to it and determine if it is in fact sad for you, or if it is in fact moving in some way, or emotional, or whatever. And I think that in a lot of ways, the film itself is kind of fighting against the people, the viewer. It does a lot of things that are discombobulating and that are uncomfortable. It's not, I mean, just the editing of the film is all over the place. I mean, it is the opposite of what you would learn in school for editing. It is super random. It seems random, but it's not. There's a lot of like upcutting of the audio, like where you will enter a scene in the middle of somebody's word, or halfway through a move, or if there's a dialogue scene, the camera will be on the person who's not talking, and then the other person will talk, and it'll switch to the other person who's not talking now, or there will be a pan sometimes when there shouldn't be, or there's even some like trucking.
Yeah, when they
the camera not panning.
Yeah.
So you would expect, even if it's a dinner scene, like there's like at the end of the dinner scene, there's a part where, you would expect there to be a pan, the camera on, it's a wide angle lens, the camera should be on a tripod, and they should rotate the camera, pan it from the people, the three people who are in the frame to the one person who's not in the frame because he's going to say something next, but it trucks. It actually like slides on a dolly sideways. It dollies over. Just weird stuff like that. And it is disconcerting from a viewer standpoint. And these are all, these have nothing to do with the subject, like what's actually in the frame. Like there's in a lot of these, it doesn't even really matter what's in the frame, or really the subject matter that's on screen. It's the choices made in the edit that are causing us as a viewer like consternation. And that is, to me, that is like next level stuff. That is something you don't see.
So when you were watching it, and there is that crazy, I don't know what it is, it might be a dolly shot, where she's sitting on the couch, and then all of a sudden the camera just slowly goes across the living room to the other corner, but there's nobody in the other corner, and you never see behind you. It's just still the shot of her in the... Okay, so that's obviously supposed to invoke some kind of feeling, or has some kind of intention behind it, okay? Mm-hmm. And for me, I keep coming back to Upstream Colors and even Primer, because what Shane Carruth does in both of those films, he does similar things where it's left up to the interpretation of the audience, but at least an Upstream Color is a prime example of what I'm talking about. Anybody can watch that and interpret it 1,000 different ways, but when I saw it, I extracted something from that movie. I'm not saying it's what he wanted me to get, but I got something from that movie. I got that relationships are difficult, and like you can't really trust anybody, and be careful of when you do, because when you do, you're going to be drugged and taken over as the person's slave. I mean, that's what I got from it. I it's a cautionary tale of not just like a date rape drug scenario. It's about taking over somebody's being just because you can. And some people are out there and they do things like that. So that might be too literal of an interpretation of Upstream Color, but that's what I took from it. That's what I extracted from it. So when you see those shots in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, they spoke to you as if you understood what you were extracting from this film. You understood what you got from this film by those shots. Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is that much like, no, I'm not saying that. Much like when looking at a painting, which I don't do very often, but people who are really into observing paintings, they can feel like a painting, a piece of art can bring someone to tears. Like that painting can bring someone to tears. See, movies kind of cheat because movies usually have people in situations that may be similar to a situation that you've experienced yourself in real life. And that can evoke an emotion, which is you being sympathetic with the on-screen character. That allows someone to emote a lot easier than a painting of a boat on a lake. Like someone can, I mean, I don't know if I know anybody who this has happened to, but someone could actually just like cry looking at a picture of a boat on a lake. I can't do that, or I don't do that. But in this movie, I was feeling something that I was feeling unease, and it wasn't because of the subject. It wasn't because they were talking about woman under the influence. It was because of the rhythm of the rhythm of the editing, the rhythm of the dialogue, the emotion that was shown by the actors, but really the subject matter. They could have been saying other random things, and I would have still felt that tension. I would have still felt that kind of unease. And that to me is really interesting, that you can literally not be saying anything and still, like, they can literally not be saying anything. It's stripping away the extra added firepower of a movie, and it's making a picture that is stripped down, and I'm still feeling that emotion. So
I find that ironic because this movie is heavy on the dialogue. This movie is heavy on the speeches. This movie is heavy on interactive dialogue. So when you did feel that added to the experience to, I hate to say narrative, because what is the narrative of this movie? The narrative is they're on a snowy road to their parents' house. They eat dinner. They're on a snowy road back. And then they stop at a school and do an interpretive dance about their life and then see an invisible pig. And I don't mean to be condescending. I'm just saying, is that the narrative? What's the story?
The story is she's trying to break up with him. She's trying to reconcile
Is she,
with her.
though?
She's trying to reconcile with herself, breaking up with him. That's the story. I mean, that's the pitch. That's the elevator pitch. Girl goes to meet Guy's parents even though she's about to break up with him. There's tension right there because she doesn't want to be there.
So when you see those shots that you just described, that adds to that narrative, that feeling that you got?
I don't think that the subject, like I said, the subject matter is irrelevant. The tools, the filmmaking tools that he's employing and the rhythms that he's using, and even the aspect ratio. It's 4:3. It's not a widescreen movie. It's claustrophobic, much like The Lighthouse did it for a different reason. Lighthouse did it because it wanted a more vertical tableau, but this movie, I think Kaufman chose a 4:3 aspect ratio, a more square aspect ratio for his film, because he wanted it to feel claustrophobic. So he wanted you to feel like you're trapped, and he didn't want any kind of like wide, expansive shots. He wanted there to be a lot of things not in frame that you're either wondering what's going on, or maybe you don't want to see what's going on. And, do you really want to see what kind of face the mom's making at the dinner table when somebody's talking? Because it's the other times when you see the faces that she's making, it's random, non-traditionally appropriate faces. So maybe, you don't want to see that. I don't know.
I get what you're saying, but this is based on a novel. Okay, so the structure of the story, which is a story of a young lady who wants to break up with her boyfriend, as you put it, there's a structure to it in the book, okay, that gave me this foreboding feeling of at any second somebody's going to jump out and scare the hell out of me. It had a thriller aspect. It had this kind of solve the murder feeling to it, even though there is no murder in it. And there are things that you would think that Charlie Kaufman, and I'm not assuming to know anything about how Charlie Kaufman thinks, because wow. Now that would be being Charlie Kaufman. Now that would be a movie, because that would be interesting, right? There are things in the book that I can understand why Charlie Kaufman would be attracted to this book. It seems like something he would be wanting to explore. but there is a tone and a cadence to the way that they speak, which is brought into the movie, which I think he does a really good job of. There's a pacing to the book that I think the movie's missing because of all of these things that you are talking about. There's a foreboding feeling in the book. Like, who is this voice on the phone?
Mm-hmm.
That starts in the beginning of the book all the way through the book. That doesn't happen until an hour into the movie,
Mm-hmm.
the very first time you hear the voice. The phone number that you see, I'm sorry, spoilers from this point on. I don't want to give anything away in the book because the book is a spectacular read, in my opinion. I loved it.
It's quick too. I mean, it's a short book. Yeah.
It is quick. Yeah, but it's also the pacing of it that's quick,
Mhm.
because I've read 200 pages and it took me like a week and a half because it just didn't grab me. This book grabbed me and took me. Ian Reed is the gentleman who wrote the book. The thing about it is that, just like I said before, the themes are in the book. Why did Charlie Kaufman expand upon them the way that he did? I'm not asking you to answer the questions. I'm saying that after I read the book, I was confused about it. Like, why multiple names for the female in the movie? There is no name in the book for her at all. She's not spoken by name at all. And I think that adds to the theme of the book, that are we really talking about two different people, or are we talking about one person? I'm just saying that there are things in the book that the phone calls keep coming from her number.
Mm-hmm.
She's getting her own number is calling her, and then that voice is being heard. It's never determined whether or not it's her voice, his voice, or it's never determined whether it's a male or female's voice. Obviously, there's an interpretation that's made in the movie that it's a male voice. And I think that's what's his name too. I can't remember his name. Oliver
Platt.
Oliver Platt. Yes, Oliver Platt. Unrecognizable too, because I found that out before the second time I saw it, and I listened very closely. You can barely tell it's Oliver Platt, but they do a really cool thing with the cadence of his voice and the rhythm of how he delivers those lines, which is very interesting, which reads the same way in the book, which was brilliant. So why do all of this? Okay, in the book, you get the theme that, is it her? Is it him? Is it one person? Is it two people? Is this, like, is the guy already dead? Because of the beginning of each chapter in the book, there is two people talking about this mysterious thing that happened to this guy. And you eventually find out that it's the janitor, and he's in the movie too. The movie starts with him, as a matter of fact. It adds to this mysterious feeling to where you're almost trying to figure out something logical, like, was this guy murdered? Did he kill himself?
Mm-hmm. Did he kill somebody else?
Did he kill somebody else? Did he do something bad to this girl at some point in their life, and this is his way of making up for it? Because when I saw the movie, I thought that at first, like, this is Jesse's confessional film about how he hurt this girl, this young lady, and this is his surreal interpretation of how he feels about what he did. I don't know why. I just got this weird vibe about that. So why does she have 3 names in the movie but no names in the book?
Yeah.
Why are those things in the book so clear, surrounded by such surreal things, versus there are very few, very crystal clear things in the movie that are bombarded by all this surreal stuff? So here's my interpretation. My interpretation is it's not Jesse, it's Jake, right?
Yeah, Jake.
Is that Jesse Plemons? Yeah, Jake. I said Jesse because of Jesse Plemons. First of all, if this movie is qualifying for Oscars, Jesse Plemons and Jessie Buckley should be nominated. Without a shadow of a doubt, she should be nominated, because the amount of dialogue that she has is unbelievable. Like, I couldn't breathe sometimes with the idea of what she had to speak at the pace and make it all make sense. And then the voices that she does. And I mean, she's amazing, and her heart, and she's so sweet to the parents during that whole last sequence with Toni Collette. It's a wonderful performance. So my theory is that this is the movie about Jake. Jake did kill himself. He was the janitor in the high school, and his life was wasted. This was the one time when he met this young lady, Louisa, or whoever you want to call her, and never went out with her. And I think that his life is flashing before his eyes as he's dying after he's killed himself in the high school, and he's bleeding out. And this is his life flashing before his eyes, but it's his life of how he wanted it to be. That's why they're always getting cross references to, is that me in the picture, or is that you in the picture?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, why is my mother old, young, and in between in one sequence of the movie? I think it's his mind trying to grapple with his life and maybe a wasted life, but I guess that's up to interpretation. But it's the what if scenario. If he had turned to her during that trivia night and spoken to her and asked her out, maybe his life would be different. So his last dying moment is about what his life would have been like if he had reinterpreted it by meeting this person.
That sounds like the book. Yeah, that really sounds like the book a lot. I mean, because the book is very clear cut as to what
Yes, it is.
what is what is happening, what is not happening. But so first of all, I think that the reason why there's multiple names in her phone is that, number one, you don't know what her phone number is, and number two, she's the narrator of the book. Like there is only one narrator. It is told in first person. The whole book is told in first person, except for the interstitial, italicized interview or conversation between the two people. So in the book, that's how it is. So and there's this issue with book versus movie in anything that has a first person narrator, is that in a movie you can't really have a first person narrator because the camera is external from the character. So right there, you can have someone do voiceover, but you're not, unless it's in like first person only, unless we're watching Hardcore Henry or whatever that movie was that was like all shot in first person by the Russian stunt team a couple years ago. Unless it's like the whole movie's in first person and you only see what the character sees, you can't replicate what a book does, because the book is telling you a story in first person, whereas a film inherently doesn't do that with a third party camera. So there's that, and that adds a couple of different things. It makes, okay, you're confused or you don't agree.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just don't necessarily agree with that. Just because the camera is there, the camera is not supposed to be there. It's not like it's a fourth person in the room. It's not doing anything but filming it.
Yeah, but we're the extra person. As a viewer, you are the
Right.
extra person.
We're the camera.
Yeah, but in a book,
Just like the book is the book. And what's the difference though? The book is the medium, the camera is the medium.
the difference
What's the difference?
is we can see things that the character can't see. That's the difference. When the character's looking forward, we're looking at the other person in the scene or whatever. So like there are things that we can see. There are things that the filmmaker is showing to us that the person telling us the story may not have access to. So it's a different paradigm already. Like it's already different from a book being told in first person. In a lot of movies, narration or voiceover, I guess, in a lot of movies, voiceover is a crutch. It's a way to just get exposition out there. I don't think that that's the case for this film. I think that it's supposed to, ingratiate us to the main character, the girl, and it's also supposed to give us information that we're not seeing. But at the same time, it's kind of meant to kind of throw us off too and get us discombobulated. But so I think there is a difference between the book and the movie as far as that's concerned. And it's inherently gonna be there because of the difference between movies and books.
Yeah, but I don't understand, what does that have to do with having to have a name for her? Why did we need 3 names? I understand what the motif that Charlie Kaufman is doing. He is showing us with the dog, with the photographs,
with the dresses,
presentation,
and the pearls and no pearls,
with the dresses, and the hair, and then the Band-Aids in different places with David Thewlis. And does he not have a British accent when he first starts to talk, and then he starts to have a British accent later on? I did the second time I watched it, I was like, wait a second, he's awfully British or Scottish in some places, and that might be part of that. I understand that's in the book. You are not sure who's what in the book. My question is, I understand what you said about it's going to be inherently different. That's not the discussion that I'm having in my mind. The discussion I'm having in my mind is it was intriguing not to have a name for her because she represented something else in the book than she does in the movie. Why continue that motif of always changing things and take it to the nth degree? Why does it have to be so much? You got the old, young, and middle-aged parents, and that scene with David Thewlis in Jake's bedroom is brilliant. And I'm dealing with a parent who's going through that right now and has memory issues right now, and it's very well done. He handles that scene extremely. Oh, look, this is Jake's bedroom. Ha! He gives this little ha at the end, and I swear that's something my dad does all the time, because I think my interpretation. He's just happy he remembers what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a door to Jake's bedroom. Oh, ha, ha. I love it. So you get all of that from the different interpretations of what people are wearing. Why continue to take it all the way to the point where you're adding something to the book that wasn't in the book, that doesn't seem necessary to add to the movie? All the other stuff that I mentioned, I'm not saying it's necessary or not, but I understand why he did it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's too much for me. It's too much to try to like figure out.
Yeah, the other thing that I think that I know you said you weren't going to try to, figure out what Charlie Kaufman was thinking as far as like adapting the book, but I do think that it seems like for the things that he kept in and the things that he removed from the book, it seems like he's kind of using the book as a skeleton, and he's like picking and choosing certain things like, oh, this will be visually interesting, or this will be, the swing set, for example. It's like, that will be visually interesting, and it'll be something to kind of throw in there, a little bitty wrench to throw in there. But then he's also like kind of like hanging that on the skeleton, and he's also hanging like Wordsworth on the skeleton, and the Pauline Kael Woman Under the Influence thing, and the Baby It's Cold Outside. I mean, he's like, maybe it's like a Christmas tree, and he's like hanging up all of his ornaments that he wants to get to show on the Christmas tree, and he's just using the Christmas tree, the book as a Christmas tree to hang the extra pieces on.
But when you have awesome decorations in your attic already, why go out and buy more decorations?
Some maybe more cinematic than others.
Is it though? They're in a car talking about it.
You're right.
She could tell the story of how she could tell the story about the guy watching her through the window that's in the book that's not in the movie. She could tell that story. Like that story to me, I had a similar thing happen to me when I was a child. I had a nightmare of a guy who came up to our screen door and also into my bedroom window. And I would wake up in the middle of my dream and freeze because this guy was looking at me through the window or through the screen door. It reminded me of the Poltergeist preacher guy. When I saw that movie later on as an adult, I was like, that looks like that guy who came to me in my dream. Now, I knew it was a dream when I woke up when I was a kid. I knew it was a nightmare, and I knew that it was paralyzing. So I thought it was interesting that obviously somebody else has had that experience, even if it was a fictitious character story. Somebody thought of that as an idea to put into a book, so I could relate to that. I'm not saying I needed it in the movie to relate to it. I'm saying that was as intriguing of a story as anything else Charlie Kaufman came up with, which a lot of stuff I think he came up with is brilliant. But I understand he has a Christmas tree, he has a skeleton, he wants to hang his own decorations on it. But my question will be all the way to the end of this podcast, when he put his own decorations on it, did it serve the beauty of the Christmas tree? Did it serve the narrative? Did it serve the story? I think when you have a writer who writes like Ian Reed wrote this book, you have to include more than just the structure of the story. You have to include his ideas also. And I think his ideas, although concise in the book and less profound and less prolific, are interesting ideas. Why are they not in the movie? They're in there, but they're peppered in between all of these other things, which I've already said that I think it's just too much. And I will say this, I always have just a little bit of chip on my shoulder when TV bashes on plays, or plays bash on movies, or movies bash on TV, and like this medium is better than this medium and poetry is better than art. I always have a problem with that. So when a filmmaker is going to talk about, and it's a great idea that Charlie Kaufman comes up with. I don't know if it's his idea or what. When he talks about, when she talks about movies are detrimental because they replace your own thoughts. You don't have original thoughts because you go see movies and they replace your thoughts as if they are your thoughts. So you never think of anything original. I got a little chip on my shoulder. I was like, oh, don't you bash on movies? You are a filmmaker. What are you talking about? But I understood what he was going for, and I thought that thought was profound. I thought it was intriguing. It was perplexing to me. I was like, does that happen to me? And then we've talked about this before. I don't know if it's on podcast, but there are all these ideas that I realize I watch these old movies again. I realize I got that idea from that movie. I never had that idea. I never said that. Josie Grossi, the Drew Barrymore movie, Never Been Kissed. I say Josie Grossi because of that movie. Instead of going, oh, that's gross, I go Josie Grossi. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, It sounds weird. So how much do I take from movies? But that doesn't mean to me that I don't have original thoughts, or at least what I think are original thoughts. So it was profound. I loved that idea. But then it's just bombarded with three other things on top of it that I can't get out of the way of to think about what I just heard. So it's an exercise in brilliant dialogue with brilliant ideas, but it's like working out. You know that the crunches are the hardest part, but you got to do your stretching out before you get to the crunches, because if you don't stretch out, you get a cramp. And then after you do your crunches, you have to run a mile because that is good for your cardio. All I want to do is focus on the crunches. I want to get the crunches out of the way. I don't know why I just use an exercise analogy, but that's what came to my mind.
We shouldn't think of source material as something that is, I mean, Charlie Kaufman could do whatever he wanted to that book. He just had to, I mean, they had to pay Ian Reed for the rights, and they had, I mean, Ian Reed was a co-producer on the film, so he was involved in the film at some point. But there's nothing that is going to force Charlie Kaufman to do exactly to you know, theme for theme replicate what's in the book. So, and I don't know if he's necessarily interested in that, but yeah, I think that he's doing his own thing, and I'm more interested in the things that he kept in, the similarities between the film and the book. That there's some, you're right, there is something that drew him towards this book, and I think there's images like the pig with the maggots and the dead lambs and the Dairy Queen scene or Tulsi Town scene, which to me is, I still don't understand that scene at all. Like, I just don't get it. Do you have any? I don't get that scene for the book or the movie.
Well, it does invoke this strange feeling that I've had where it's the middle of a blizzard and people are still going to church. You know, that has actually happened to me in my life. And we had to walk to church, my brother and I, and that's fine. We were little kids, and it was a nice walk, but it was a blizzard, like 18-foot drifts, snow drifts, blizzard, okay? We got there and there was like 14 people there. Mm-hmm. And it just felt bizarre to even contemplate the concept that no matter the weather, you still went to see God on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And even though it was probably a ridiculous thing to do, we still did it, you know, or we were told to do it, because I don't remember my parents going. But that might be my childhood memory and being resentful that I had to walk in a blizzard to go to church. And then when we got there, there was this strange feeling of, this is just not right. We shouldn't be here right now. Not because it's God, not because it's church, not any of those connotations or any kind of interpretation of religion. It's not that. It's just that there's a blizzard outside and we're two little kids who just walk through all of these snowdrift to get to church. It's counterintuitive to do that. So for me, that whole sequence, I don't understand it either. I just get feelings from it. Yeah. And it is actually very close to the book, other than Tasty Town and Dairy Queen, which they probably couldn't get the rights to do Dairy Queen. That's probably why they didn't do that.
No, it's because he wanted to sing the Tulsi Town song.
Right, which is great, by the way. Yeah. And in the book, they drink lemonade. Yeah. And in the movie, they get Oreo blurs or burrs. That's what they call them, I guess, which is... Yeah, burrs, which is like, blizzards, right. But there's this feeling of, it's just counterintuitive to be in a blizzard getting blizzards. It's just strange. And so it invoked a feeling. I don't understand the girl with the sores on her arm. I don't know what that means. Is she supposed to represent how we see society? Because she talks about the other two being pretty, and she's an outcast from society because she has these scars or these bumps or bruises or whatever, or these oozing whatever. Is that a representation of how we see people, and that's just a physical representation of how we see beauty in this world? I don't have a clue. No idea whatsoever. But I can tell you this, the feeling I got from the book and the feeling I got from the movie is exactly the same.
Yeah.
It feels like I woke up in the middle of that blizzard looking for ice cream. And I'm cold as hell, and I'm still dreaming. It's another dream sequence for me, because only dreams can feel certain ways. I mean, I guess situations in life can too, but it just had a feeling. So my interpretation of it is I have no idea, but partially that's a problem for me because just like Upstream Color, if I went and listened to what Shane Carruth says about what he wanted the themes to be or what he wanted us to extract from it, I would be like, oh, okay, I didn't get any of that, but I did feel this, this, and this. I did extract something from it. I'm having trouble extracting things from the movie. It's a prime example of what I'm talking about. I know how I feel during that scene, and I don't care what the interpretation is. I would love to hear what Charlie Kaufman's interpretation of Ian Reed's story is. I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff that happens in the movie, I would love to hear somebody else's interpretation so I can like hang my coat on it because I can't figure it out myself. And so I'm not saying this is a bad movie. I have no way of interpreting whether or not I think it's a good or bad movie because I keep saying extracting, but that's the word. I am not taking from it what I think I should be.
Did you feel something?
In parts.
Okay.
In the movie, you mean? In parts.
Yeah.
Some in parts. Most of the time I was sitting there thinking, going, what am I supposed to be feeling here? What is this? What am I supposed to be feeling here?
Okay.
Why is Toni Collette doing what she's doing? Why are they so over the top? See, that's a prime example of where I think that, and I understand, and we have talked about this, you and I, off podcast, during podcast, in our casual time, in our dinner time, whatever, that you can't, a book is a book, a play is a play, a movie is a movie, a piece of art is a piece of art, poetry is poetry, and they should just be interpreted for what they are, not based on, I think the book is better and this is what they did better in the book. I never talk like that. And I'm not saying that here. I'm saying that the book spoke to me on different levels, and I took a lot from the book. Like I probably will read this book a couple more times in my life, and I hardly ever say that about books. I usually read it and I'm like, I'm done. I've accomplished this goal. Next. Because reading is an exercise for me. It takes effort for me, and it's worth it, and I love it. We talked about this a couple weeks ago where I feel like I'm not wasting any time in my life if I'm reading a book. It's constructive downtime. But this movie, I feel like I'm supposed to understand it on some level, but I'm not getting anything from it like I did from the book. And I thought I would feel differently in the second time I saw the movie, but I felt exactly the same. I actually got tired quicker the second time I watched it because she just talks and talks and talks and talks and talks. And I'm like, wait, that's a brilliant thought. Wait, let me pause it. Let me write that thought down. Let me think about that for just a split second. So I have done exactly what I said I was going to do in the beginning of the podcast, where I've repeated myself 1,000 times over the same thing. But the point is, I need to know, what is this? What am I supposed to be taking from why Charlie Kaufman did the scratches on the door plus that tape that used to be there? I was intrigued by that, and I wanted to know what, but the scene in the basement in the book is clear.
Yeah, so I think that that was a missed opportunity for me. Like if I was structuring a movie, being able to, like, knowing that we see the parents in one age or in one period of their life, and then when you go upstairs, you get to see both of them in an older portion of their life, and then the downstairs, it would logically follow that the basement would actually be them in a younger stage of their life, or represent the younger, or earlier in time. And the fact that it is sealed or that it was sealed at one point and there were scratches on it, meaning people wanted to get into it, that makes me think that it's like you want to go to your past when it may be more innocent, or when you had, less worry or less responsibility or whatever, but you can't. You're barred from going to your past. And the only place to go is into your future or getting older and all that stuff. I mean, like, that was like, and why doesn't he want to go down there?
Sold.
Yeah, I know, but that didn't happen. So yeah. And then it also broke up.
But that makes more sense to me.
That also broke it up when Toni Collette comes back and she's dressed, she's younger, and then she's dressed in the 50s dress or whatever and doing the laundry, but she's on the same floor as when she was a little bit older earlier on in the film. So that totally, that was not a theory that panned out for me, but I thought that would have been really interesting, and just not being able to go down into the basement or whatever. But
when they go down in the basement, when she goes down in the basement or he, however you want to interpret it, goes down into the basement in the book. It's clear what's down in the basement, okay? And it's scary and it's, damp and it's a hole in the ground is how they keep describing it in the book. In the movie, she goes down, spoiler, she goes down and sees the same photographs that we see her showing the parents earlier on her phone.
You mean paintings?
After she talks about paintings, yes.
Yeah.
Correct. What I say, photographs? Pictures of her paintings. I guess photographs of her paintings because they're on the camera. Anyway, so you see that again when she walks down into the basement and they're signed by Jake and it's another, who is she? Is it him, her, just like the little kid picture? Is it him, her, which is in the book too? And then she says something about this house reminds me of the house I grew up in. And then she says later on in the same sequence that she grew up in an apartment. And so we get it. Why are we going down in the basement again to reinforce this idea that the audience is not sure who is who? We've already got it. In the book, it felt like she explored and found something new about the parent-child relationship, which could be her relationship if she's Jake, in my interpretation. And then it's poignant when the mother in the book gives her a photograph, which she has to look at later on to try to uncover who she really is. Is she Jake? Is she not Jake? Wait, if I'm Jake, then why did she give me this photograph? Let me look at this photograph. It adds this thriller type aspect to the book that is a missed opportunity in the movie because it's just the same theme again. It's just blown up photographs, or I'm sorry, larger paintings, prints of her paintings, and then the actual paintings on the ground. So what was the necessity of it? And actually, when you started to interpret it with the possibility of the 3 layers of, or 3 levels of house, 3 stages of life, that lit me up. That made sense to me. And that is something I don't know if I agree or disagree with. And obviously we debunked it because then Toni Collette comes in when she's younger.
Yeah.
But that I can hang my coat on and try to figure out how I feel about it after hearing what the interpretation is. I'm not saying that I need somebody to interpret art for me. I can feel, see, and sense things, and I have the ability to feel them deeply. I just need something. I need an interpreted dance in Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria to make it make sense to me. And so for me, that's a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So at what point in the book did you understand that she was him and he was her and they were all the same?
Isn't that a Beatles song? I am the walrus. I think from the very beginning, I had a sense of it.
But is that because you watched the movie?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Could be. I guess I'll never know. But when the phone rings and it's her number, I would have been suspicious of that when I first read the book. I would have been, and I hardly ever say this. I wish I read the book first. I never say that. I wish I had read this book first, because then it would have been a thrill to understand what Charlie Kaufman was going through or wants us to go through based on the skeleton of the Christmas tree that Ian Reed has set up. I think immediately there's a sense of there's something weird about the way that she talks to him in the beginning of the book. And it's also set up with the italicized opening chapters.
Yeah, why are we hearing about a janitor when,
Yeah, so we're already trying to interpret what we've heard.
But as the book's going on, she goes into this, if you're completely naive, she goes into, gets close to the end, Jake goes into the school, and then she goes in after him, and then she sees the janitor kind of walking around in there. So you could glean from that at that point in the book, when she starts to try to figure out, how to navigate the school, that the janitor could very well kill her and Jake, and that would be what they're talking about. That would be what the 2 people at the beginning of each chapter are talking about. The fact that, he was quiet, nobody ever thought he would do this, and he didn't talk to people very much.
Right.
I mean, so you could kind of see.
Yeah, but I thought she never really sees him. I thought she just hears him. The thumping of his squeaking of his boots. I don't.
Yeah,
does
when
she
she's
ever
in
see
that,
him in the book?
it's when she's in that science room or whatever, and she's kind of like in the corner. I mean, I think that close to the end, but she sees a shape. She sees a shape when she walks in, and he's holding a mop, and he's got a mask
Oh, yeah,
on.
that's right. She sees through the blinds. You're right. She does see
Yeah.
that, but it's not clear.
It's not clear. Yeah, she doesn't see a face. She doesn't
Yeah.
know if it's
A
Jake
mop
or
or
who
a gun
or
or
what.
you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that there's a very like in the book there's a Fight Club-esque spoiler for Fight Club book and movie coming up right now. There's a Fight Club-esque quote in there is she says, "If I can hear it, he can hear it." And that's when she's in the school and kind of walking around and doing different stuff. And so that's a very like, okay, all right. And then, I mean, that's pretty clear. And then when the two people are talking at the beginning of one of the late chapters, one of them says to the other one, like, oh, he had allergies to certain foods, milk and dairy. And I was like, well, that just like really solidifies it right there. So there's no other interpretation, I think, for this book as far as what the end of the book is. But still, the movie, I think, is definitely open to interpretation.
Which is great. I'm all about it. I think it's a challenging film, and I think it's worth exploring. And I can't wait to see Upstream Color again when I think about it. And I hate for that to be the prime example, but it is, because it's so like surreal in places but I was intrigued by it, and I want to see how I feel about it a second or third time when I watch it. This seems to be, if I was exploring it in a class, I might follow it up by watching it again. And because I read the book in between, I wanted to watch it again to see how I felt about it. And I was even more shaky a second time watching the movie for me. And I have the book with me right now. And there are references in the beginning of the book where she talks about, well, if I say that to him, will he hear that? Can he hear what I'm thinking? He can. There's like these strange little things that are thrown in the beginning of the book that are sort of Fight Club-esque. So maybe that's what I was clinging on to when I was reading the book after already knowing what might be the interpretation of the movie. So let me ask you this. So we have that dance sequence at the end of the movie, which I thought was beautiful. And I loved that there is a modern movement dance in front of us. And, modern movement dance is left up to the interpretation of the audience, but they definitely create characters, and there's definitely themes, and there's definitely the artist wants you to feel certain things and to extrapolate and extract things from the dance. And I understood it for what he wanted me to understand it for. But do you think that that's replacing those 2 or 3 pages in the book where he writes, "What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?" It's like
that's
3 pages
super
of
creepy.
That.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
Why?
Well, it evokes all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
I've never seen something like that in print, like that.
When you read the book, did you read every one of them before you turned the page?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Nope.
I felt odd about not doing it.
Really?
Like I felt odd about it. So so I started going, what are you waiting for? 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 And as an actor, that's a challenge. So I was like, oh, I think this is going to be the whole page. And then I looked for patterns to see if there was any words differently. So when I'm on the third paragraph, if you will, even though there's no paragraph, I was looking to see if I needed to read it all in case there's a word in between it, that was something other than what are you waiting for? And then I got to like the third page of it, and I thought, well, he wrote it this way. Why am I assuming I shouldn't read it? Because it's monotonous and it's the same thing over and over again. So why not read it again and read the whole thing line for line? And that's what I did. And it was a weird feeling at the end. It was kind of like those where you blink your eyes and hold your eyes steady on an image. And then when you close your eyes, you can see it on the roof of your eyelids. It was kind of like that feeling. Like all I could think of is, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And I couldn't get it out of my head. And finally I had to put the book down and just go, what is happening? This Bloody Mary moment, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. And then all of a sudden something was going to appear in the bathroom in the dark. So I was like, what are you waiting for? ? Has to be a reason why he did that for 2.5 pages. So after I read it, it kind of messed with my brain for a little while. Like it was hard to get out of that. It was hard to stop thinking, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? But my interpretation of that is that we waste a lot of time. It's like that line Tilda Swinton has in Benjamin Buttons, where she goes, all this time, just wasted. And she ends up doing something and accomplishing something in that movie that she talks about with Benjamin Buttons. And we learn through that incident that there is no time. You make your time. And if you don't have time to do it now and you've wasted your time, start doing it now, because you can end up achieving what you said you wanted to do when you were younger. So that's how I was interpreting that. Like, what are you waiting for? You know, your life should be what you want it to be.
Oh,
that kind of thing.
I took it in a much darker way. So,
okay.
I mean,
killing yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what he does. That's exactly, or she or who, that's what the main character does in the book. I mean, there's really no out in the book. It's really heavy. And I mean, I don't take that lightly. And so, I mean, I've been lucky enough to never really have those feelings, but I can't imagine what, I mean, I can only empathize with someone who's had those feelings, and I feel for them. And so I can see how it can be something that is so all encompassing that it would be a representation, that one representation would be 3 pages of the same question. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? I mean, it's just overwhelming. So I think that's what, to me, that's what Ian Reed was trying to do in the book, was trying to get the reader into that overwhelming feeling to push them through the rest of the film. I mean, because after that in the book, it's super dark.
Okay, so at the top of the page of that, whatever you want to call it, it is 3.5 pages, almost 4 pages. Mm-hmm. It's the Dancing the Night Away. Tickets are $10. What are you waiting for? It's that banner that's in the high school. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, is this Charlie Kaufman's interpretation of this? Was that what that dance was? And if it was, I think that's quite brilliant, actually.
Oh, yeah.
It actually kind of makes me emotional thinking about it, because I guess maybe I'm fortunate that I didn't read it that way. Like, I didn't read it that way. I read it like, get off your couch and do something with your life. Ooh. Like, it's not, what are you waiting for? I didn't read it like that. I mean, obviously that's what it is. You know, you reinterpreted it for me, and I think you're correct. But now that I think about the dance sequence in the movie, it makes me emotional, because that's what I think he was trying to convey. I think that's why he put that in the movie. I think that is a person's... No?
No. We're putting this together, man. Okay, so Tulsi Town. The Burrs, right? Whenever there's one shot, it's she's walking into the school, and she walks up the stairs, and next to the stairs is a big dumpster, and it's like a top-down shot. We don't have very many of those shots in this film, but it's a top-down shot of her, showing her and the dumpster next to her, and the dumpster next to her is full of Tulsi Town Burr cups, just absolutely chock full. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So I think maybe if we put all these things together, this is not the first time that he's gone through this mental exercise of reliving portions of his life, including Girls That Got Away and his parents and what he either did or didn't do for his parents and all that stuff. And every cup or pair of cups in that dumpster represents him reliving and going through each of those things over and over and over again, and obsessing over them or whatever. And maybe the, what are you waiting for portion of the movie is the dance sequence that is, some sort of like a finality of some kind, which could be read as suicide or could be read as moving on. But it does seem very final as far as like the dance sequence, and then transitioning into the Oklahoma, him singing the song from Oklahoma at the end. And he's got like a Peabody Award or something. I don't know. He's wearing some sort of medal. And Jesse Plemons everybody's in old person makeup, which looks like super creepy, but I guess that's normal for theater people, where that makeup is like, did you remember that makeup?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. It reminded me of Beautiful Minds.
Oh,
It reminded me when he won the Nobel Prize in Beautiful Mind is what that reminded me of. I don't know
okay.
why. I guess because Russell Crowe and Jennifer Connelly are in old age makeup and he's wearing a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe the multiple Tulsi Town Burr cups represent him just like replaying things over and over in his mind, and then this dance sequence is kind of like a moving past it, or getting past it, or moving on somehow in some way.
So
which I
accepting
guess,
it
yeah.
for what it is.
Or accepting his life for what it has been, and then him. I don't know the last scene. I'm not sure how to evaluate the last scene. I'm not sure because the very last shot of the movie. We're gonna try to bring this home, everybody. The very last shot of the movie is what I think is their car covered in snow. Not the truck, not the janitor's truck, but Jesse Plemons' car covered in snow and like undisturbed, and it's the morning time. So the car has been there all night, overnight, and is not moved, and potentially for multiple days. I don't know. And that's it. That's the last shot of the film. And actually, if you watch all of the credits, you can kind of hear some stuff in the background. I don't know if it's like cars showing up or something.
Sounds like a dumpster, like somebody's picking up the dumpster.
Oh, interesting.
That's what it sounded like to me.
As far as the end of the movie is concerned, I guess you could say that he's, I don't know, you say maybe he's committed suicide. It's very, I don't know how to read that.
Well, that's how I read it. That's what it read to me when I saw the movie. I interpreted it as. Now, the interesting question is it her story or his story? And is she real or was he real? Meaning at one point in life.
Mm-hmm.
There's never really a clarification because they keep saying, no, that was me in that picture, or no, that was my farmhouse. She says that multiple times throughout the movie, that whatever experience they just had that was Jake's experience, she says something along the lines of something,
Sure.
it was her experience too. So is it her story or is it his?
Well, if it's the same person.
Right. But I find it interesting that we're assuming it's his story and she's an interpretation of what happened in his story. I find that intriguing.
And maybe that's based on the janitor being a male in the film.
Possibly, but at this point, why is she wearing a burgundy coat in the beginning of the movie and a blue coat on the ride home? I mean, who knows why Charlie Kaufman has done what he's done. But in the book, it's clear that this person has committed suicide because they talk about how he does it.
Well, he describes it at the narrator describes it as it's happening. Yeah. So there's no, like I said, there's no question as to what the end of the book is, but there is some vagueness to the end of the movie.
So I guess wrapping this up for me, this is how I look at it. I find the movie intriguing. I find it interesting. I find it worth the time to explore it. And maybe one day I will explore it again. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to call to me. I will infinitely talk about it with anybody who wants to talk about it. I would love to hear people's interpretation of the movie. The book I'm thrilled about. I've already stated I'll probably read it again. It might even become one of those ones I read once a year. Who knows? I don't have many of those. I have actually only one, A Christmas Carol at Christmas Time, and I missed it last year, but that's beside the point. What I don't understand is this book is so interesting in amongst itself. Why did Charlie Kaufman feel the need to interpret his interpretation of the book? Why not? I love Charlie Kaufman. I stated that in the beginning, and I think I'll follow Ian Reed from this point on. Why not, when you have such an intriguing book, film the book? And I understand what you said about the differences and all that other stuff, but this book could have been filmed in a way that was less Charlie Kaufman-esque and more Ian Reed-esque and made an interesting movie.
Yeah.
So my question would be, what drew Charlie Kaufman to making these changes in the book? I will say this. I give credit to Charlie Kaufman that his ideas are spawned by the ideas of Ian Reed's book, obviously.
Yeah.
I wish more of it was what Ian Reed wrote. But like I said, these themes are smaller and a lot less in the book. There's only, a handful of them or ideas. There's only a handful. But it's interesting to me why Charlie Kaufman clinged on to this book and wanted to make a movie about it, write it, and direct it, which is unusual for him based on the pattern of most of his other films. He's mostly only written them. What was it about the book that called Charlie Kaufman into it to make a movie about it? And then why did Charlie Kaufman decide, I'm going to go off in 1,000 different directions with the ideas from this book? I'm not saying it's a bad idea that what he did in the movie. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to save face by saying I'm not going to say a bad word about Charlie Kaufman and I'm going to kiss his ass. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm trying to understand why one artist would take another artist's work and turn it into what Charlie Kaufman turned it into.
The Shining is a good book, but why did Stanley Kubrick take The Shining and completely rewrite huge portions of it instead of just shooting a good book?
Well, because and I just recently saw The Shining again with my father. And we talked about this because he's like, what is happening with this movie? And, the one piano note, dong, 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 the whole entire time. That's not the exact tone, but you understand what I'm talking about. It's nerve-wracking because the interpretation based on Stephen King's book is warranted of what he put on film. Meaning what he came up with the bloody elevators and the twins and the way that he shot this film invokes that book and the ideas of that book. What he changed from page to screen were things that I think Kubrick didn't think would work on film. Although Kubrick is famous for saying, if you can write it down, you can film it, by the way. He said something along that lines. If you come up with an idea and write it down, you can film it. So I'd like to talk to Charlie Kaufman and Ian Reed in the same room together and say, okay, what's going on here? But the idea and the feeling, now I've not read The Shining. I've only seen the miniseries, which is based more on the book, and I've read the differences, so I can't speak on the book in general. But like the maze is not the maze in the book.
But there's topiaries, though.
Yeah, topiaries, right. And, the voice.
Danny's the character.
Right, but what's the voice in his mouth? The person in his mouth, is it Danny? Anyway, that's a real person in the book. Sits on his shoulder. It's like a real little person. That, like Kubrick, that's not Kubrick to like superimpose an actor and shrink him down and make him look like he's standing on this kid's shoulder. So he interpreted it with a voice and a finger and that kind of stuff. So those differences make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get you to defend The Shining or defend Kubrick's The Shining. I mean, I think that...
No, I was just giving you examples of why it makes sense to me, why he reinterpreted it for his film.
But also, if you have Charlie Kaufman is an auteur, whether you like his directing or not. But when, like we talked about earlier, he's tempered by other filmmakers when he's the writer and they are the director. But when he is the writer and the director, he doesn't have that kind of external force put on him to either adjust or rein him in, I think. And if you give him the money and the resources to make a movie, he's going to make it his, whether it follows along with the book or not. So I don't know. I mean, if you wanted to just shoot it as a straight movie, then they probably should have gotten somebody else to do it. But I want to see what Charlie Kaufman's interpretation of this movie or of this book is. And I don't necessarily want to see a page for page documentation of the book. I'm a little bit more lenient in that, I guess, but either way. So you got anything else?
No, I just want to clarify something. I'm not looking for a page-to-page interpretation of the book that is exactly like the book. That wasn't my point. My point is that I don't understand where Charlie Kaufman got what he got and why he went the road that he went. And for me, I want to understand what Charlie Kaufman's interpretation is, and I want to take something from it, and I want to take what I can take from it. And I just found it more difficult than not in this film to do that. And I'm not saying that an artist doesn't have the right to interpret somebody else's material and change it as much as they want. I'm questioning the changes that he made as a reason to do it. I don't understand why he did the certain things that he did. I'm not saying that I need a clear cut documenting the book page to page. That's not the point. If that's what I came across saying, I apologize. That's not my point. My point is that art is in the eye of the beholder. I'm good with that. but I definitely interpreted the book from what I took from it, and the movie didn't do it as much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe
right.
20 years from now, I'll be way more open-minded about
Yeah.
certain things, and it will come into play. Who knows?
You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can follow us on Twitter at actorengineer, and we will see you next time.